When Myra's in-laws told her she couldn't bring her kids to Thanksgiving, she thought she had misheard. For a moment, she waited for someone to laugh, to say it was all a misunderstanding. But the silence that followed felt heavier than stone. Janet, her mother-in-law, sat across the table, smiling that tight, polite smile that never reached her eyes. "Sweetheart," Janet began sweetly, "we need to discuss Thanksgiving arrangements this year." Mira had hoped this would be an invitation, a chance to reconnect, to let her twins, Lila and Theo, spend time with their grandparents. They adored them. But then Janet's tone shifted. "We've heard some rumors," she said. "And, well, none of us feel comfortable having your children around ours." Mira froze, the words slicing through her like glass. Her twins were 9, full of life and laughter. But everything had changed the year before, when Lila was in a boating accident during a school trip. The sailor responsible had been drunk, and though Lila survived, she came back different. She barely slept, always full of restless energy, sometimes impulsive in ways that worried people who didn't understand. Mira had kept things private to protect her daughter. Only the teachers knew the truth. But gossip travels fast, and cruelly. Within weeks, rumors spread around the school that Mira had sold her daughter for a weekend to buy a new car. That same car sat outside their house now, mocking her with its shiny reflection. Janet's words made everything clear. The gossip had reached them, and instead of defending their granddaughter, they believed the lies. "We're trying something more refined this year," Janet said with a fake smile. Mira tried to keep her voice steady. "So, just no kids this year?" Janet sighed dramatically. "Listen, I'll be honest. We don't want your kids there, but Kara's are invited. So, find a babysitter or don't come. Up to you." That was the moment something inside Mira cracked. She thought of all the times she'd smiled through their backhanded comments, the way they always praised her sister-in-law, Kara, like she was royalty. "No, Janet," Mira said softly. "If my children aren't welcome, I'm not coming either." The silence that followed was thick and sharp. Janet crossed her arms, her smile stiffening.
"Fine.
"Have it your way," she snapped before slamming the door behind her. The echo carried through the house. Mira stood still for a long time, staring at the door, until she heard giggles from the playroom. Lila and Theo were busy building a blanket fort, their laughter filling the air, innocent and unaware. Her heart clenched. They didn't deserve this. None of it. That night, as Mira tucked her children into bed, her mind raced. She had spent years trying to earn her in-laws' approval, biting her tongue, hosting dinners, attending family gatherings where she always felt like an outsider. But for what? Janet and Richard had made their choice. It was time for her to make hers. When her husband, Ben, came home, she told him everything. He rubbed his temples, sighing heavily. "I'll talk to them," he said, though his tone held no conviction.
"Don't," Mira replied.
"They've already shown us who they are." The next morning, Mira woke to a message from Kara. "Janet says you're being difficult about Thanksgiving. Why do you always create so much drama?" Myra's jaw tightened. "Me? She uninvited my kids and welcomed yours." The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. "Finally," Kara replied, "she just wants a peaceful dinner. You know your twins can be a handful." Mira stared at the screen, disbelief giving way to cold anger. "Enjoy your perfect Thanksgiving, Kara.
Count us out."
She turned off her phone and exhaled slowly. If her in-laws didn't want her family at their table, fine. They wouldn't have her help either. For years, she had been their dependable go-to. When Richard couldn't figure out his email, she fixed it. When Janet needed rides or errands done, she volunteered. When family events had to be coordinated, Mira handled it all. Meanwhile, Kara got all the praise without lifting a finger. That pattern was about to change. She started with silence, no more texts, no more calls, no more errands. By the week before Thanksgiving, Mira had ignored over a dozen calls and messages. On the morning of the holiday, her phone buzzed again. "Janet." Mira almost didn't answer, but finally did. "Hello, Janet." The older woman's tone was unusually soft. "I know you were upset," she said, "but I really hope you'll reconsider. We'd love to have you and Ben there. Myra's stomach tightened. You mean without my kids? It's just one evening, Janet sighed. You know how special Kara's girls are to us. Myra's heart dropped. There it was, the truth spoken plainly. If my children aren't welcome, Mira said, voice steady, I'm not coming either. Janet scoffed. You're being stubborn, dear. Mira ended the call mid-sentence and set her phone down with shaking hands. For the first time, she didn't feel guilty. That morning, as the smell of waffles filled the air, Mira watched Ben and the twins laughing in the kitchen. Flour dusted their cheeks, and Lila's giggles echoed through the room. It was the most peaceful Thanksgiving she'd had in years. But just when she thought the storm was over, her phone began to buzz again, and this time, it wasn't about invitations. Mira hesitated, her phone vibrating again and again. Ben glanced up from the counter, concern flickering across his face. Want me to turn it off? He asked. She shook her head. If it's an emergency, I should know. She finally answered, forcing her voice to stay calm. Hello. Oh, so now you pick up, Janet said sharply. Having fun sulking while we enjoy a lovely dinner? Mira sighed. If you're calling to make me feel bad, I don't have time. Janet's tone turned cold. Did you cancel the Amazon account? Mira frowned. What are you talking about? Janet huffed. The Prime account we've been using for years suddenly stopped working. It hit Mira like a brick. That account wasn't Ben's, it was hers. Years ago, when Janet had complained about delivery costs, Mira had added her as a household member on her Amazon Prime. She had forgotten all about it. You mean my account, she said slowly. Janet chuckled, but it wasn't friendly. Don't be so petty, Mira. You make good money at your tech job. The least you can do is share your benefits. Myra's voice trembled with disbelief. You excluded my kids from your home and still expect to use my account. Janet sighed. We're family. You're overreacting. Something inside Mira finally snapped. You're right about one thing, she said evenly. I did cancel your access. And since we're being honest, you won't be using any of my accounts or services again. Ever. There was silence on the other end, then Janet gasped. Mira, don't be absurd. Mira continued calmly. And while we're at it, don't expect any more tech support, errands, or favors either. You made your choice when you excluded my children. Now I'm making mine. Janet's voice turned icy. You'll regret this. The call ended with a sharp click. Mira stood there for a long moment, her phone still in her hand. Then she looked up. Ben was watching her quietly. Everything okay? He asked softly. She managed a small smile.
Yeah.
Just setting boundaries that should have been there years ago. He nodded, saying nothing more. The rest of the day unfolded in peace. They made homemade pizzas, played board games, and built a giant pillow fort in the living room. The twins squealed with laughter, their joy echoing through the house. For the first time in years, Mira felt like she could breathe. But deep down, she knew it wasn't over. People like Janet and Richard didn't just let go, they retaliated. And Mira was right. The silence lasted only 3 days. On Sunday, her phone lit up with Kara's name. Mira hesitated but answered anyway. Hello. What the actual hell, Mira? Kara's voice exploded through the speaker. Mom's crying because you cut them off from everything. What's wrong with you? Mira closed her eyes. Did she also mention they've been using my Prime account for years without permission? There was a pause. Well, Kara said defensively. She told me you were helping them out. Mira let out a humorless laugh. Helping them out? They've ordered thousands of dollars of stuff on my account. And now that I stopped it, I'm the villain? Kara sighed dramatically. Look, I get you're upset, but cutting them off completely is extreme. Mira clenched her jaw. You mean like excluding my children from Thanksgiving while inviting yours? Silence. Then Kara said quietly, they just wanted a peaceful dinner. You know your kids can be wild. Mira laughed bitterly. So, they can use my account, but my kids can't eat at their table? Got it. You're twisting everything, Kara snapped. No, I'm seeing it clearly for once. There was another pause before Kara's tone turned manipulative. Maybe we can compromise. Keep the primes shared, but set some limits. That way, no one suffers over a misunderstanding. Mira almost choked on her laughter. You want me to keep paying for people who called my kids unworthy? No thanks. They didn't mean it like that, Kara murmured weakly. They said it, Mira replied coldly. Those exact words. The line went silent. Finally, Kara hissed, fine. Be petty. Don't expect forgiveness. Mira smiled faintly. I'll survive. Weeks passed in total silence. No calls, no texts, no guilt-tripping messages. Mira assumed her in-laws were hoping she'd crawl back, the way she always had. But not this time. She finally felt free. Then, one afternoon in mid-December, an official-looking envelope arrived in the mail. Ben opened it, frowning. It's from my parents. Mira raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, guilt, manipulation, or gaslighting? He handed it over. She tore it open, scanned the contents, and burst out laughing. You have got to be kidding me. Inside was a formal letter and an itemized bill. They're charging us, Ben said in disbelief, for favors they've done over the years. Myra's jaw dropped as she read the details. Babysitting hours, family dinners, airport rides, even times they'd brought over leftover food. At the bottom of the page was a total, $6,475. They're billing us for being family, Mira said slowly, torn between laughter and fury. Ben's expression hardened. They must be desperate. Mira nodded. No, they're trying to control us one last time. But this time, I'm not backing down. The following afternoon, Mira drove to her in-laws' house alone. She clutched the ridiculous invoice in her hand, her jaw set tight. When Janet opened the door, she froze for a moment before forcing a fake smile. Oh, so now you decide to visit, she said coldly. Mira held up the letter. You seriously thought this would work? Janet crossed her arms. It's what's fair, she replied. Mira let out a sharp laugh. Fair? You want to charge me for dinners and babysitting while using my Amazon account for free? That's what you call fair. Richard appeared behind Janet, looking smug. We've done a lot for you, Mira. You've cut us off completely. This is just our way of balancing things. Mira stared at them in disbelief. No, Richard. You cut us off the moment you told me my children weren't welcome. You took advantage of me, and now you're putting a price tag on family. Janet's lips pressed into a thin line. If you don't want to pay, maybe we should take this to small claims court. Mira smiled calmly. Go ahead. Janet blinked, thrown off. What? Take me to court, Mira repeated. Explain to a judge why you're billing your daughter-in-law for family dinners while stealing her Prime membership. Richard's confidence wavered. He cleared his throat. We just thought you'd want to make things right. Mira laughed, shaking her head. Oh, I am making things right. She tore the invoice in half slowly, letting the pieces flutter to the floor. I'm done being your personal assistant and your ATM. Janet gasped. You ungrateful little. But Mira turned, walked out the door, and didn't look back. As she got into her car, a strange calm washed over her. For the first time in years, she wasn't angry. She was free. She started the engine, exhaled deeply, and whispered to herself, Merry Christmas. That night, as she drove home, snowflakes danced across her windshield. For once, she didn't dread the holidays. She felt light, almost peaceful. When she arrived home, Ben was waiting by the door, anxious. How did it go? He asked. Mira smiled faintly. Better than I expected. They won't bother us again. But she was wrong. People like Janet and Richard didn't give up, they escalated. It started with a text 3 days before Christmas. Mira, this is getting silly. We're family. You don't turn your back on family over a little disagreement. She ignored it. The next day, another message came. We've decided to forgive you. Come to Christmas dinner, and we can move on. Mira nearly laughed out loud. They forgive her? Then came one from Kara. They're really hurting Mira. Just apologize, so we can all move forward. Mira finally replied. Interesting. They weren't hurting when they excluded my children or used my account without asking. I think they'll survive. She blocked Kara's number right after sending it. When Christmas Eve came, their home was filled with joy. The twins wore matching pajamas, dancing around the tree as Ben strung up lights. For once, everything felt peaceful. Then the doorbell rang. Ben froze. Don't tell me, he started. Mira sighed. Oh, I'll tell you. It's them. She walked to the door slowly and opened it. There they stood, Janet, Richard, Kara, and Kara's husband, Mark, all bundled up and wearing expressions of fake concern. It felt like a staged intervention. Mira crossed her arms. What do you want? Janet smiled sweetly. We just want to talk. Not interested, Mira said flatly. Richard sighed. Enough, Mira. You've made your point. Let's resolve this before it goes too far. Mira narrowed her eyes. Too far? What does that mean? Janet glanced nervously at Kara, who stepped forward. Mom and Dad have been talking to a family attorney, Kara said cautiously. Mira froze. A what? Janet nodded, her voice dripping with false concern. We're worried about the kids. You've cut them off from their grandparents. That's not healthy. We're just exploring our options. Mira felt her heart hammering in her chest. Options? Like what? Richard cleared his throat. We've been looking into grandparents' visitation rights. For a moment, all Mira could hear was the blood rushing in her ears. Then she laughed, loud and bitter. You can't be serious, she said finally. Mark frowned. What's so funny? Mira stepped closer, her voice calm but sharp. You think any judge will side with you after everything you've done? You excluded my children. You used my accounts. And now you're threatening legal action because I stood up to you. Richard's face darkened. You don't want to go down this road, Mira. She met his glare with a cold smile. Actually, I do. She pulled out her phone. Because I have every message, every voicemail, every receipt. So please try me. Carrie, or rather, Kara, gasped, her face turning pale. Mira, come on. This is family. You can't threaten them like that. Mira turned her sharp gaze toward her sister-in-law. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm protecting my kids from people who treat them like mistakes. The air between them grew heavy. Janet's expression twisted into fury. You're being completely unreasonable. Mira smiled faintly. No, Janet. I'm finally being honest. Without another word, she stepped back into her house, gripping the door firmly. Merry Christmas, she said calmly, then slammed it shut right in their faces. Outside, she could hear their muffled voices, Richard's angry tone rising and falling, Janet's high-pitched protests. But Mira didn't care. She locked the door and turned around. Ben stood there, holding a mug of cocoa, his eyes wide. That was intense, he said quietly. Mira smiled wearily. Yeah, but it needed to happen. He nodded, pulling her into a hug. You did the right thing. For the first time in a long while, Mira truly believed that. She'd spent too many years swallowing her pride, letting them walk all over her. Tonight, she'd finally taken her power back. They never followed through with their so-called legal threat.
Of course they didn't. They had no case.
Deep down, Mira knew they'd realized they couldn't win. The silence that followed was golden. No phone calls, no guilt trips, no unexpected visits. Just peace. For months, Mira enjoyed the quiet. The weight she didn't realize she'd been carrying was gone. Every morning felt lighter. The twins seemed happier too. Lila no longer asked why Grandma never called. Theo stopped comparing himself to his cousins. Their laughter returned, brighter than ever. 6 months later, the world around them had changed. It was early summer, warm and bright. Mira sat on the porch, sipping iced tea while watching her twins splash in a small plastic pool. Their squeals of laughter filled the air like music. Ben stepped outside and handed her another glass. It's been quiet, he said, settling beside her. Mira smiled softly.
Yeah.
It's nice. For once, there was no tension between them. No invisible wall made of guilt and manipulation. Just calm, beautiful peace. Ben leaned back, looking out at their children. Do you think they'll ever try again? He asked. Myra's eyes followed the twins as they splashed each other with tiny buckets of water. She smiled faintly. Maybe. But it doesn't matter anymore. Ben nodded slowly. You handled it better than anyone could have. Myra chuckled. Better? You mean I lost my mind halfway through? You stood your ground, he corrected gently. And you taught our kids what self-respect looks like. Myra looked down at her hands. For years, she had blamed herself for every conflict, every slight, every cold look from her in-laws. But now she saw the truth. It was never about her being good enough. It was about them needing someone to control, someone to use, someone to blame. And she had finally stepped out of that role. I guess I did, she said softly. Ben smiled, squeezing her hand. You did. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. As the evening breeze brushed against her skin, Myra thought about all the times she'd cried herself to sleep after family dinners, all the times she'd bent over backwards to please people who never cared to understand her. And then she looked at her children, laughing in the sunlight, their faces glowing with pure joy. That was what mattered. Not approval, not appearances. Just love, the kind that didn't have conditions or comparisons. She'd built that for them, piece by piece. The twins ran toward her, dripping water all over the porch. Mom, Theo shouted. You promised to play water fight. Myra laughed. All right. She set her glass down and ran into the yard, the sound of their laughter echoing into the warm evening. Ben watched from the porch, smiling as Myra finally allowed herself to just be, not the dutiful daughter-in-law or the accommodating wife, but herself, strong, free, and enough. The sun slipped behind the horizon, casting long golden shadows across their small yard. Later that night, when the twins were asleep and the house was quiet, Myra sat by the window with a soft smile. Her phone buzzed once, a new message. She picked it up, half expecting another jab from her in-laws. But it wasn't from them. It was from a friend. Just checking on you. You seem so much happier lately. Myra typed back, I am. She looked around her cozy living room. Toys scattered, family photos on the wall, the faint hum of peace surrounding her. For the first time in years, her home finally felt whole. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, waking Myra with its gentle warmth. She stretched, feeling lighter than she had in years. Downstairs, she could already hear the twins arguing playfully over who got the last pancake. Smiling, she joined them in the kitchen, ruffling Theo's hair and stealing a bite from Lila's plate. Hey, the girl squealed, pretending to be offended. Myra laughed. Consider it a mom tax. Ben chuckled from behind the counter. That's not how taxes work. It is in this house, she replied, and they all burst into laughter. Life settled into a new rhythm. There were still challenges, late nights at work, school projects, messy mornings, but everything felt lighter. Without Janet and Richard's constant interference, Myra and Ben rediscovered their peace. They took the twins to the park on weekends, tried new recipes together, and even started saving for a short family trip. The house wasn't perfect, but it was full of laughter, and that mattered more than perfection. Myra no longer checked her phone with dread. She no longer wondered if she'd done something wrong. Sometimes, though, little memories would sneak up on her, like the sound of Janet's voice saying, "We've decided to forgive you," or the way Richard's expression turned smug when he thought he had control. Those moments used to haunt her, but now, they only reminded her how far she had come. She had learned that peace wasn't something given, it was something claimed. And once you claimed it, you protected it like your life depended on it, because in some ways it did. One Saturday afternoon, as Myra folded laundry, Ben walked in holding an envelope. "For my parents," he said quietly. Myra raised an eyebrow. "What now?" "A refund request for Christmas lights." He chuckled.
No.
"Just a card." I think they finally gave up. Myra opened it cautiously. Inside was a single line written in Janet's elegant handwriting. "We miss the kids." No apology, no acknowledgement of the pain they caused, just 4 words that landed somewhere between guilt and pride. Myra placed the card on the counter without a word. That night, after everyone was asleep, Mira sat in the quiet living room staring at that card. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she whispered to herself, "I miss who they could have been." She folded the card neatly, tucked it into a drawer, and walked away. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need validation. The peace she'd built with her family was all the closure she'd ever need. Outside, the moonlight spilled through the window, silver and soft, a silent witness to her freedom. Months later, Mira found herself volunteering at the twins' school fair. She laughed as Lila proudly showed her a handmade bracelet she'd won, while Theo tried to balance 3 cupcakes in his hands. "You've got too many," Mira teased. "No, I don't," he protested, and frosting smeared across his cheek. A few other parents nearby smiled warmly at her. There was no judgment in their eyes, no whispers, no pity, just kindness. It was a reminder that not everyone was cruel, and not everyone believed lies. As the fair ended, one of the teachers approached Mira. "You've got amazing kids," she said sincerely. Mira felt her eyes sting a little. "Thank you," she whispered. For years, she had been made to feel like her children were too much, too loud, too restless, too different. But now she saw what others did, that their energy was joy, their noise was life. And she had fought for that, for their right to be loved exactly as they were. That evening, as they drove home, Theo hummed along to a song on the radio while Lila leaned against Myra's shoulder, half asleep. The sunset stretched across the sky in streaks of orange and pink. Ben glanced over from the driver's seat. "You know," he said quietly, "you changed everything." Mira smiled softly. "Maybe. But it was worth it." "Yeah," he said, "it was." They fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that only existed between people who had weathered storms and come out stronger. When they reached home, Mira stood for a moment at the door, watching her family disappear into the warmth of the living room. She took a deep breath and smiled. For years, she had tried to fit into someone else's version of family, polished, perfect, performative. But now she understood that real family wasn't about blood or approval. It was about love, laughter, and showing up for each other even when things weren't perfect. She closed the door behind her gently, whispering to herself, "We're enough." And for the first time in her life, she truly believed it. Please like, comment, and subscribe.